Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown, INDY!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? I think so. January 24th. How is everybody doing? Getting a little warmer out there and bringing some warmth, as always, our good friend Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star. Kyle, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Jim. How are you?
Cannot complain. Nobody wants to listen to it. You're right in the heart of the busy season for you. High school basketball is the girls are about to hit tournament play, which means tournament play is right around the corner for the boys, but they are winding down in a season that's been fun.
Yeah, we just got the city tournament done, so that was fun to see Attucks and Cathedral go head-to-head on Monday night, and that always kind of signifies the start of the end of the regular season, really. We've only got about a month left, and then, of course, the sectional play not far after that. It's about 5 weeks out from that, roughly. So probably 5 weeks from yesterday. So, it's hard to believe, man. It feels like you just get done with football. You finally get your feet set for basketball, and then it's county and city tournament time already, and you're almost getting through it. So, it's been an interesting year. I mean, I think, watching that Attucks game on Attucks Cathedral on Monday, you kind of feel like both those teams are potentially state championship contenders, but then you look at who they'll have to see in sectional 10, and you got Lawrence North in there. You got a lot of really good teams. I think Attucks is right up there, though. Cathedral is too. I think people probably sleeped on them a little bit going into the year, just not knowing their personnel. But I'll tell you, I wrote about Brady Kaler last week, and he visited IU recently. He's got he had a Wake Forest offer even before the season, but Butler and I'm missing another Big Ten offer. But he's a real deal. I mean, he's just got to get stronger. But he's a 6'8", 6'9" wing who can, he's athletic. He can shoot. He's really, really kind of the player basketball is meant for anymore. And really played like it on Monday. Had 27 points in that game against Attucks, and really I thought rose to the occasion.
Yeah, that it sounds like a hell of a player to keep an eye on. And Attucks, how cool is it to see them at such a high level? I mean, they're a historical school when you talk about the history of Indiana or Indianapolis specifically, but Indiana high school basketball. Their name is all over those historical pages.
It's a vitally important part of the fabric of Indiana high school basketball, and you walk through the hallway that leads into the gym there, and it always kind of gives you chills because you got the 55 Oscar Robertson team photo, the 56 Oscar Robertson team photo when he won Mr. Basketball, the 59 photo when they won state again, when Bill Garrett was there and coaching them, and it's just a unique place, and it's a school that went by the wayside for a while too, and since come back strong. And I give a lot of credit to Chris Hawkins, who's the coach there now, who's had chances to leave. He's I'm not going to say he's going to stay there forever. I mean, it's just not how stuff works anymore. But the continuity of him being there, has led to the success. And there's more to it than that. You got to have players, obviously, but I think players want to come there. If you're in IPS, and I know, they're trying to build Tech up to be, and Tech has been good. Won state 10 years ago, but they've kind of been the big IPS school here of late. But Attucks has definitely carved out their own kind of unique situation again. And that name, I was talking to one of the IPS athletic directors on Monday night, and he's like, now kids, they see that name, and instead of us losing kids to the township schools and the private schools, that name carries weight. They've seen what they've done here, winning back-to-back city championships again now. And, where Cathedral, it had been a little bit of a cakewalk for them in the city tournament. So, it's cool to see, in Washington making the semifinals of the city was cool. We've lost so much, kind of the flavor of city basketball with all these schools closing, like Arlington, Broad Ripple, Howe, Northwest, Marshall, all these schools in recent years. That it's good to see the, those type of schools make runs and keep playing, in the current day, Attucks and Washington, and Tech. So yeah, it's very meaningful. And yeah, I'm actually working on a story for the All-Star NBA All-Star Week about, sort of along those lines a little bit, but yeah, it's definitely an important part of Indiana high school basketball.
Yeah, I cannot imagine how cool it would be just to walk down the same halls that Oscar Robertson did. I mean, there are names in the sport that just transcend a certain level. Larry Bird, Oscar Robertson are two of those. I mean, they're two of the greatest names to ever play the game, period. And to have the good fortune to go to those same high schools. I know there's a kid that just broke Larry Bird's scoring record, I think, at Springs Valley. So it is just, especially with it being some small schools. These are not the schools that are, doing well financially, that live in great affluent areas. These are just good old fashioned Indiana high schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's important. I think when I probably several years ago, 7-8 years ago, I did the top 75. It was the 75th anniversary of the Indiana All-Star team, and I did the top 75 All-Stars and counted them down, and Oscar was number one on the list. And I actually had a chance to talk with him the day that story ran, and I was honestly struck by how much it meant to him. It's like, for us to make him the number one player of all time, and it shows you what Indiana high school basketball means, meant to him, and just where he started from, really where he kind of made his name to begin with. But he's number one to me because of everything he did, not only pro, but college, high school, winning back-to-back championships in high school, and also the cultural significance of Attucks is sort of beyond anything else. Being the first all-black school to win in the country, an open state championship. So to me, it's one of the more. I wish there was a movie or something, or something that was sort of like Hoosiers that would tell that story. It probably wouldn't be done right, so maybe it's better not to be. But it's obviously an important part of our history, and we're going to lose these people eventually who were playing in the 50s and 60s at that time, and hopefully those stories get passed down to the next generation of players. And it's cool. The kids at Attucks know it because those banners are up on the walls, and those names are listed, and those photos are up, like I said. So there is even if they don't maybe know all the players, but a lot of those guys do still come around if they can. So there is some connection to the past there that's a little bit different, I would say. It's more like a small town, sort of, I would say, than a city school in some, or a suburban school in some ways. It's hard to explain it, but it is a little bit different.
And no one knows, well, I'm sure someone does, he does, but all the things that not only Oscar, but that team probably had to go through back then in the 50s. It was not exactly an easy time for African Americans, especially one that was beating your butt like that. That was probably even less accepted. But the things that they had to go through made it even all the more tougher.
Oh yeah, and there's all there's stories about that, and honestly, a little bit before Oscar's time, or even into his time a little bit, they would have to go around and play a lot of the team. There's a lot of schools that wouldn't play them, so they ended up playing a lot of little towns and places around Indiana you may not expect, and it seems like a lot of these little towns. When I did my book years ago, it was like, oh yeah, Addicts came here in '47 or whatever, and you go back and find out, it's like, yeah, that's true. They did come here. What a scene that must have been, in these little gyms and in wherever in Indiana, kind of the outlying area beyond Indianapolis, and just interesting to think back to what that must have been like in those little towns and little gyms.
And not only that, speaking of a Hoosier-esque type of thing, Brian points out that the real Hoosiers, Milan, beat Oscar's team in the '54 state semis at Butler, and then Addicts would go on to win the next 2 years after Milan did. So you want to talk about the perfect lineage of Indiana high school basketball. There it is.
Yeah, sort of that intersection of time. I mean, no one would have known at the time they were playing each other, or maybe they would, or maybe had some inkling, but how those two stories would kind of intertwine in one game, and then I had a chance to write about that Milan team too, and the '54 team, and and those guys too, super close.
I didn't think you were that old, man.
Oh yeah, I was there. I was covering it in '54, but no, they're getting up there in age too, and it was fun. It was fun to sit down, and I think it was a 60-year anniversary. We all sat down at the Milan Museum down there, and you could just tell it's almost like a group of brothers, when you sit there and listen to them, and they all kind of just bounce stories off each other like they never missed a beat, and it's 60 years later, now 70 years later. But yeah, it really a neat story in itself. Both those teams back to back is something else that it happened that way. But yeah, just obviously those stories are important to tell the history of Indiana high school basketball.
Absolutely. What is on your docket for storytelling coming up here next? Because I know it's a non-ending stop right now.
Yeah, so got a story coming out tomorrow on a team that probably maybe people have never even heard of. I'll kind of leave it at that. It's kind of a fun story, and I had a chance to follow this team around it would have been early last week, and kind of tell the story of who they are. So I won't give too much away with that, but you can read that tomorrow at indystar.com, and then some other kind of unique stories coming as well, in addition to our normal day-to-day coverage. Trying to get a lot done here in the next 5 weeks. Just I have all these stories that I'd like to get to, and then you're like, oh man, it's we're out of time. So it's kind of that sort of try to prioritize what I'm going to get to, but yeah, and then obviously a lot of our normal stuff too, the Monday column and all that stuff. So we'll have a lot of coverage, obviously.
Well, and I'm glad I did not forget. I'm glad I wrote this down a couple of days ago. Monday, we were fortunate. Greg Rakestraw joins us each Monday, and was just announced as being the 2023 National Sportscaster of the Year for Indiana. And ladies and gentlemen, the 2023 National Sports Writer for the state of Indiana is a guy named Kyle Neddenriep. So make sure everybody takes their hats off to Kyle, because finally, is that your first win in that?
Well, I actually got it in 2020, and I was sort of like thinking that would be the only one, just because that was such a weird year. They gave it to the weirdest selection possible. But yeah, I don't know how this stuff happens. I don't know how it's voted on. Or
I'll tell you how it happens and how it's voted on. The members, people like me that are also in the media, they vote on it, and they know who's good. And that's why dude, you're the hardest working guy in the writing business. Anybody that does what you do, that covers the amount of teams that you cover, the amount of players that you cover, to have to not only remember all that, but to possess all that knowledge, and going back to Milan and to Addicts and all of that. That's why, and that's how, and that's why he is the 2023 Sports Writer of the Year for the state of Indiana. And I did not want to, man, I'm glad I didn't forget that. Congratulations. A more than well-deserved honor.
Well, thanks, Jim. I appreciate that. And, it reminds me of, Terry Hutchins used to win those year after year. I'm like, Hutch, how are you winning? And he, Hutch sort of just, whatever. Hutch had his own sort of personality to him, but
oh man, did he ever?
but yeah, it's definitely an honor, something you don't take lightly, and it is an honor coming from peers and things like that. And I don't even know what to say. It's cool. You just try to do your job every day, and hopefully good things happen. And certainly you don't ever think of things like that. So, but yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
Absolutely, and that's why you got to make sure that you follow Kyle Neddenriep and keep up with his coverage, because it is the best, I'm telling you. And I look forward to it, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and we look forward to everything that's coming out, and especially the piece tomorrow, because you know how exciting that is going to have to be, people.
Absolutely, I appreciate that, Jim. Thank you.
You betcha. Give Kyle Neddenriep a follow and keep local papers alive. Be a subscriber. I am. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and including Rick Bozich. And we'll be back with that and much more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
I can hear you, don't worry.
Oh, you're good. I'll let Rick know we're ready for him. Morning, Rick.
Good morning. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, you're good. We just went to break about a minute ago, so you're fine.
Okay. Thank you. What's new?
It's a good question.
Now, what did Fish say on your show?
So Fish confirmed, I guess clarified, I should say, the way that he worded the I can't remember exactly what it is that he said, but you know what was quoted of him during the Wisconsin game. Jim, right. Do you remember exactly what Don clarified on Monday?
He was just saying he was more embarrassed at in how it went down. Not that he was embarrassed for the program or I don't want to put words in Don's mouth, but
he does say it in the segment that we clipped. I just don't remember exactly how he worded it.
Gotcha.
And if we had a direct line, I'd probably give more of an opinion on it of what he said, but we don't.
Gotcha.
How are you, sir?
I'm okay. Bit of a late night, but I'm all right.
Well, you've always been that party boy, so
yeah.
Oh.
All right, here we go, guys.
Has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop, Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. It is January 24th. I hope you're having a wonderful week. If not, you're on the backside of it. And we've got Rick Bozich for you from WDRB.com to help you get through that. Rick, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Had a game here last night in town. Duke was in. More fans than usual at the KFC Yum Center. Duke never knew there were that many Duke fans in the area, but they came from all over the area. They had probably several thousand fans there. Yeah, not as many as Kentucky, but they had a lot of fans there. And
wow.
A lot of NBA scouts there to see the Duke players, and Duke got off to a good start. Louisville came back, cut it to 3 twice in the second half, but just not good enough to finish the deal, and Duke ended up winning by, I don't remember, 11 or 12, whatever it was.
Louisville seems to be playing better.
Yeah, they're playing better. They're just not getting wins. They're not good enough on defense. They gave up, I think, 83 last night. They're giving up 83 a game. And their ACC losses, they're giving up 83 a game. And last night was the first time in 8 games they didn't give up 10 threes. And Duke had 9. So you're not going to, they're playing winning offense. They're playing losing defense. And that's what the problem is.
Well, that it sounds like another team that's very familiar to us. Yeah, Indiana now number 95 on KenPom. Indiana State, by the way, is number 43. Just to
that
give
guy's
you a
getting
little
mentioned for some coaching jobs. I never heard of him until he got to Indiana State, but the Chicago papers have his name in there as a possible candidate for DePaul.
Man, that's how you climb the ladder. Winning cures all. Indiana, of course, coming off of a loss that we expected to happen on the road in Wisconsin, a place they haven't won since was it 1902? I think now. Not quite that far back, but
Teddy Roosevelt was
yeah. Well, now they go to another place that's not going to be any easier on this weekend as they travel to take on an Illinois team that was already playing well, even without Terrence Shannon Jr. And now they get him back, which that can only bode well for them and make that a better team again. At 2 teams that I think are going to actually challenge Purdue. For Purdue is not going to walk away with this Big Ten title, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either.
And I'm not sure that they even win it. I'm not sure that they can't win it, but not winning this title would not only not surprise me. You look back at last year, theoretically, Indiana probably should have won it because of the games that they lost. When you lose a 20-point plus lead at Iowa and a 20-point plus lead at Wisconsin or whatever was that last year, I think. Yeah. Wow. You're like, and you lose the Big Ten by a game. Whew, that really hurts. But this year, those teams, Illinois and Wisconsin, they're going to give Purdue all they want. And Purdue has to get through the likes of Northwestern again and Nebraska, I think. So we've seen what can happen and that they go down. And Kentucky loses last night. The teams are going to lose. It's college basketball. It's what makes it fun. But Indiana, on the other hand, their losses are piling up. And not only that, if you are a KenPom follower, before the Wisconsin game, he had a pick to lose 12 out of the remaining 13 games. And even if you're an optimist, I say, all right, they win 3 out of those games. That still puts you at 500 at best.
I don't know where to begin in terms of over the entire Big Ten. I agree with you. I think Illinois and Wisconsin are going to make Purdue sweat to the wire, especially Illinois with Shannon back as good as he's been. Was it last night they blew out Michigan and put Juwan Howard was the coach last night, people were speculating on his future. Wisconsin is sort of a surprise team. You got to give Greg Gard credit. I mean, people have written him off several times. He's quietly, I don't think I can name the only player on their team that I can name. Well, before the guy Klismak that got into it with CJ Gunn would be a Segian, and he started last year, and I think they decided he wasn't good enough. They moved him to a bench role. They went out and got a guy from St. John's and some other players, and he sort of changed what they're doing and what they're about, and they're successful. So a tip to Greg Gard. I mean, they how many points they scored against? They used to win games scoring in the 60s, and they put how many up on Indiana? 91. That's
91 points.
Yeah, that's terrible.
That's usually more points they score in 2 games combined.
Yeah, I mean, in Indiana, 91 to Wisconsin, 87 to Purdue, 86 to Nebraska, 104 to Auburn. I mean, the thing that's alarming about Indiana is in the games that they've lost, I mean, they gotten blown out in a number of them, and especially against. You could argue that they've lost to 3 number 1 seeds. Most people don't have Auburn as a number 1 seed, but they could be. They're leading the SEC. UConn, Purdue, and Auburn, and Indiana wasn't in their class. When it happens once, it can happen. When it happens twice, you raise your eyes. When it happens 3 times, you can't deny it. So they got work to do to get better, and they probably aren't going to be able to get better until next season because they don't have the. We've talked about this really all year. The roster management has not been good, where they don't have a good 5 to fit together and play the modern game of basketball. They don't have it.
No, and I've heard Woody talk about correctly that they are on paper a young team, but at the same time, I want to say, well, whose job was it to not make you a young team? Whose job was it to go into the portal and not leave an open scholarship, but to get a veteran guard or whatever it is you need, yours. So you can't complain about something that was your responsibility that you didn't do if that's what you feel the problem is to the team, and it is part of the problem. They need, not only do they need veteran leader, they need leadership because they're not getting that from the places they expected it to. That has gone haphazard. Xavier is he's done what he's done. So you can't get leadership from that. And now you're relying on people like Malik Renew, who's a second-year player who has done a hell of a job. I've watched him all season long try to become this team's leader, whether it's vocally or on the court. And he's done that a lot at times.
Yeah. And, I think most coaches would tell you that you want a guard to be a leader because they're the ones that control the offense, that get the offense started. They're the first point of attack on defense. That's what you want. And, Xavier's not a leader. And Galloway, I think, tries, but for whatever reason, it isn't working. But leadership works a lot better when you make shots, when you defend, when you do some of the things you need to do, and they're just not doing. And they have too many breakdowns in very basic areas of rebounding, turnovers, failure of attention to detail on defense, over rotating, leaving 3-point shooters open. We've seen it from the very beginning of the year. It's not something that's just cropped up in the Big Ten. I remember being at the first 2 games of the year. I came to the Florida Gulf Coast and Army games, and I was alarmed that they had so much trouble putting those 2 teams away. And neither one of them has turned out to be very good teams. You can say, well, it's early, they're breaking in some new guys, but if you're a good team, you put those kinds of teams away. You don't give up the kind of easy shots they were giving up in those games. And, it needed to be fixed quickly and taken seriously back then. And I'm not sure that it was. And now it's too late. Once you're in the Big Ten play, you're playing good teams that are focused and are paying attention to detail every game. And if you're not ready to go, they're going to exploit you and do it in a hurry.
Absolutely. And Philip pointing out that Illinois destroyed Northwestern at home by 30 without Shannon. that gives them an opportunity to become a better team without him. And then when you add a great player back, as long as it's not a disruptive thing, that just makes them all the more stronger. And they're going to end up being probably well, obviously they're one of the best teams in the Big Ten, but they're going to be a team that it could be one you don't want to see in the NCAA.
Illinois.
I was thinking that. Yes.
Yeah, they got a lot of the pieces that you need. They've got a lot of pieces that you need to be successful. They got a lot of perimeter guys. They've got a lot of quickness. They've got tenacity. We've seen Brad Underwood's teams play. They're pretty tenacious on defense. They try and make you uncomfortable. They get into you out on the perimeter and make it hard for you to try and start your offense. And that's what you don't see from Indiana. I mean, you see a lot of times where when teams come in, they decide how the game's going to be played instead of Indiana dictating to the other team how the game's going to be played. And, that game tonight, though, is at Northwestern. Northwestern plays a lot better at home. Ken Palm's only got Illinois favored to win that game by 4, so I don't think it'll be another 30-point blowout.
No, either me, but I that should be a hell of a game to watch.
Right.
And a fun one in this league, because that's going to be one that determines who wins the league title or not. This is one they probably, Illinois, if they have a shot to win the title, they have to win this game, which
sure.
that's a tough chore.
Yeah, it is. I'm trying to look at the rest of Illinois' schedule. They play Purdue the next to the last game of the year. So they got Purdue. 2 of their last 3 games are against Wisconsin and Purdue. Looks like they only play Wisconsin once. So it's going to be a Wisconsin-Illinois-Purdue race for sure. And I don't know, Nebraska might be the 4th best team. They're sure hinting that they could be.
And they're working on that. And as far as Ohio State, I think that the Nebraska is the better of the two. So we'll see how that goes. But Indiana now has to go on the road to battle Illinois, and they've got to find something. I don't expect them to win. No one probably does, but they have to be competitive at the very least. They have to be competitive and in this game, because they kind of haven't been in a lot of these situations.
Yeah, I don't know what the way is. Make shots, have guys make shots that they don't normally make. Somehow play a little bit better defense. The thing that their defensive efficiency really is not good. I'm looking in conference only games. Indiana is they're 6th in the league in defense. They're 12th in offense. So offense is the bigger issue. Looking at Indiana in terms of defensive efficiency. So they rank 2. They're next 3rd to the last in the league in turnovers in conference play. So they're turning it over too much. They don't get many steals, and as we all know, the percentage of field goal attempts that they make that are 3-pointers is, not good enough. They're 13th in the league in terms of where they get their points from the 3-point line. They're among Big Ten teams, they rank 13th in percentage of points they get from the 3-point line. That's not – when you got Trace Jackson Davis, you can live that way. When you got the group they have now, you can't.
Yeah, and the other night at Woody's radio show, he talked about the situation with C.J. Gunn picking up the flagrant, which admittedly, if back in the day, A, that doesn't even get seen, and B, there's nothing done about that. That wasn't as malicious as it's been made out to be. It was just stupid is what it is. I mean, it's a stupid foul. Yes, he was baited into it, but you're baited into stuff all the time. If you ever watch football, who gets a flag if there's a fight? The second guy, the guy who responds. So you have to be smarter than that, especially in knowing where you are, right in front of the opposition's bench. I think I don't know if it's, and I see the word thug turned around, and thug, that's horse crap. It's not that at all. It's just not smart, not doing things intelligently, And I think that has shown itself more than anything with this team is they make more mental mistakes and don't do the things they need to do from a mental standpoint. That to me is one of their biggest problems, along with not hitting shots.
I think it's frustration too. I think they thought they were going to be better than this. I think they thought they'd be more successful. A lot of guys thought they'd be playing better than they're playing. And you get frustrated, and you can't allow yourself to be your behavior to be dictated by the circumstances. I know that's hard to do when you're in an opposing arena and people are yelling you and taunting you. And the other kid, I think, was wiping his head on CJ Gunn's jersey or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was he got baited into what happened, and I've never seen any suggestion that CJ Gunn was any type of dirty player. Anytime I've ever talked to him, he comes across as a really good kid. But what you have to remember, and it's been said by many others, is in today's world of college basketball, there's 8 or 10 cameras in the building, and they're all tuned into that screen that the refs go look at, and you're not going to get away with anything. And you shouldn't be able to. So you just have to understand that there's no covering up the camera and say, I'm going to do this. I mean, it doesn't work that way anymore. And they'll go back and the coach will say, hey, I think my guy got this. And they'll go back and check it out during a timeout. And if you did it, you'll get penalized for it. And you'd think by now, is it 7 flagrant ones they've had or flagrant fouls overall? Somebody tweeted that stat out and caused a big hubbub the other day that Indiana leads the country in flagrant fouls, which isn't a stat you want to see. But once the word gets out, officials talk that, hey, look out for this guy. I think Xavier is definitely a guy who's earned that kind of reputation among officials because he's exaggerating when he gets knocked down. He's talking to guys, he's complaining, and it's like that usually is not the right path. Just play the game and let the refs call the game. You play, the refs call the game, and see where it goes.
Well, when you're doing that, you've stopped relying on your own ability to force the tempo, to force the issue, to force whatever, and now you're relying on acting, and that's when you know that you've given up. You're not competing. Now you're
concentrating on what you're supposed to concentrate on, right? You're thinking about something that's not what's part of the game plan. It's like, and it becomes almost like retribution or spite. Like, I'm going to show you, or I'm going to show this guy. It's like, no, you don't need to do that. Just play the game.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, from a flopping standpoint, oh, daggone it. What's her name? Everyone knows her. Caitlin Clark. Man, I was slowly getting into the accepting that Caitlin Clark is just a badass player, and she is that, but she still has ways of doing things, and I think that she undoubtedly flopped in the collision with the Ohio State fan that came onto the floor. It was that those other two views are almost hilarious. It looks like she goes into a dance routine with they're throwing her hands up and snapping her head back. I saw one that, although it may not be the kindest, might have been the funniest thing I've seen in a long time. And it described her as snapping her head back as if she was riding in a limousine in 1963 in Dallas, Texas. It's kind of a little dark, but pretty funny because that's kind of how it was. But she gets away with that stuff, and everybody, is all carrying her and all. And I'm like, oh, gee whiz, she knocked the holy crap out of that girl that hit the floor, and she hit the floor in complete natural movement, like someone just knocked the living snot out of her. But I found it funny that in that losing moment, she was able to find a way to draw attention to herself.
Yeah, I mean, kind of a dumb thing for her to do, though, because if you're going to fall down in the middle of a court storm, you're putting yourself in the risk of being trampled. But I'm just glad she's okay. And she's another one. Didn't realize that there's cameras everywhere, and people found a view that made it look like she exaggerated what really happened. So not a good deal.
And but the court storming, this has become an issue, and now it's a real issue now, and I get it. I mean, Calipari was whining because he lost. I don't think anyone got hurt in that situation, but we can go all the way back to that. That cost the Indiana-Kentucky series, but now you see it so much now, and this exasperates the situation, whether it was real or not. This stuff can, and eventually somebody probably is going to get hurt. So it's going to have to stop.
Yeah, I mean, it does need to stop because somebody is going to get hurt. I know that Erica Crawford and I talk about this all the time. One year, we were in St. Louis for a game when Louisville played, and St. Louis was about to beat Louisville, and the crowd was coming right behind us. We were sitting right in front of the student section, and we told them, hey, guys, give us 30 seconds here. And we packed up our stuff before the game was over and got out of there because they were coming right over press row, man. I mean, we were afraid our computers were going to get trampled and kicked, and nobody would have cared in the glory of the moment. And it can be a scary thing. I mean, it really can be, not only for, sometime there's going to be, could be an incident where fans go out and they bump the wrong player, and a player, pushes back or punches back or whatever. It could happen. So I get the excitement of the moment, but it's definitely has a danger factor to it.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that hasn't happened, that you bring that up, especially in the time when you're dealing with a team that just lost. Man,
It has happened in football. I think it has happened in football. But
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
What's up next for you, man?
This weekend, Louisville plays Virginia. I'll be watching, obviously, IU, Illinois. Kentucky's on the road at, trying to think where they go this weekend. Arkansas, which isn't having a very good year at all. All the hubbub over Mr. Musselman and his team's not any good at all. They're near the bottom of the SEC, I'm pretty sure. Let me look and see. But they had a shockingly – I wasn't surprised totally that they lost to South Carolina last night. I was surprised they lost the way they did. They fell behind by 20 and lost by 17 after playing one of their better games of the year and getting their new player. And Vanderbilt's Arkansas is 1-4 in the SEC, 10-8 overall. So after 2 or 3 really strong seasons at Arkansas, Eric Musselman's he's not the flavor of the month this year.
Well, and I was looking, talking about Indiana being 95th in Ken Palm. If you look a little further down, I lost him again.
Arkansas is 100.
And then 108 is UCLA. You want to talk about a fall from grace? That's a fall from grace. Mick Cronin, who was being lauded as, and rightfully, he's a great coach, but man, they're having a horrible year.
Yeah, they are. And he's criticized his players. He's criticized their NIL options that they have there. It hasn't gone well at all for them. They were behind 50 points one game in the second half against Utah, I think it was. They lost to Utah 90-44, and they were behind 50 at one point. So, they're not doing very well. And
is NIL making these guys too damn soft and not willing to do what it takes?
I think it could make them harder to coach them. It could make it harder to coach them. Say, I'm getting paid what I got my money. I don't know.
Indiana's a team that is always thought of as they're up there in the NIL world when it comes to basketball. And yet the winning results has not come with that.
Yeah, and it's a great situation for the players because in pro sports, fans know how much every player's making, and they can make a determination like, hey, that guy's he's a bargain, or that guy, how much does he get? What's he doing? He's not earning that money. I think if people knew what some of these players were making in comparison to what they were producing, it'd be a little bit more heat on some of the players or an appreciation for the ones who were overachieving. But we haven't got to that point yet where the NIL salaries are readily available to everybody.
No, I wonder, do you think that will come? I've asked that question, and I asked it to Mitt Winter, an attorney that we talk to from here time to time, and I don't know that we see that.
I don't know enough about the legalities of it all. If it comes to a point where I think the schools that it ends up they are paying people
or an employee, they're an employee.
Yeah, we will. But because then it becomes from the school and it's public record of what their outlays are and W-2s and all that stuff. But in terms of a private corporation, it'd be like finding out how much you make or I make or John makes. So probably not. But it happens in pro sports. For whatever reasons, the agents like to put it out there. It used to be in I remember when I was younger in pro sports, we didn't know how much players made. It sort of was rumored sometimes, but now we know it. And as soon as the contract comes out, they like to get it out there in terms of what the buyout is, how many years it goes, and what all the bonus clauses are and stuff like that. We expect it, but so far that hasn't happened in college sports, and some of these players should be thankful that it hasn't.
Right.
Liam McNeely's named an All-American, so that will certainly help his situation. Not that he needed much help in that regard, but that probably just adds to it for him. What's up next for you, Rick?
This week, like I said, Virginia's in town at noon to play Louisville, and I'll be watching IU, Illinois, and Kentucky against Arkansas. And big thing is Sunday afternoon, seeing whether Lamar Jackson can take down Patrick Mahomes and make it to the Super Bowl. As you would imagine, this is a big Baltimore Ravens town these days because of Lamar Jackson and Malik Cunningham being on that team. Lamar's got a tremendous amount of fans here, and they want to see if he can get to the Super Bowl.
Looking forward to it, man. He is playing extraordinarily well, and they're on a roll. So
yes, he is.
Rick Bozich, WDRB.com. Make sure you're giving him a follow for a complete wrap-up in all kinds of sports. You'll love it. If you're not,
all right,
you're missing out. Rick, appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Jim. All right, man.
You betcha. Hey, we've got a little more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home,
just for reference, whenever you're, what does this say? Oh, whenever you're talking about the best of segments at the end, you can say we'll hear from. So I've got the Pat Graham and Sharon Wilkerson segment I'm going to use. One of our older Shannon Griffith segments, and then the Travis Miller one from a couple days ago. You don't have to be that specific. You can just say we'll hear from those people if you want to tease the second hour in that way. But you also don't feel like you have to.
Was it the one on Travis is on Mike Woodson?
Yes.
Now, is that what I said?
I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, he's talking about my comment that is NIL hurting some of these players or making it, they're not to the point to where maybe they don't work as hard as they used to. And then so now my comment has been turned around to say that that's supposed to be IU, that IU's problems are a direct result of boy, that sure sounds like a quote that someone did not make. I don't understand why. Well, most people don't have a problem understanding what I say because I just said it. I said what I said, and I meant what I said, not to be interpreted. It doesn't need to be interpreted. It is what it is. I didn't even mention IU.
I think I'm annoyed with coaches acting like that they don't have enough NIL money. And yeah, I understand that's a real problem and it's tough to navigate. I'm just tired of them using it as an excuse on why their team isn't good enough. Because honestly, it seems like the coaches want to be lazy. They don't want they just want to get the best players and let that be all they have to worry about. All right, we're back in 30. We'll have about 5 minutes in this last segment. And just remember about the second hour, what you need to do.
No payments for 90 days. That's right. 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to andymorehonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. We're about out of January days, January 24th, so we got a week left. Good games coming up this weekend. Of course, a lot of people saw that Kentucky went down last night. Who did they lose to? John Boy?
They got hammered by South Carolina on the road.
That's what I thought. You're going to see that. And while that cracks me up that people are still focused on that, that I could care less, which I don't look at it from a fan standpoint, but I'm like, I guess that is making some people feel better, but that doesn't change anything about the life of what's going on with your team. Indiana has got to get, well, let's face it, Indiana is not going to finish this year in a positive stretch, I don't think, in basketball. I don't know that they finish with a winning record, to be honest with you. I think the best that they can do is break even, if not have a losing record. But I will say that there are other programs that this has happened to, although UCLA is one I will point out. They're also, their season's in the tank. What did I say they were ranked? 108th. They're 8-11 right now. They're going nowhere. But and so will Mick Cronin be under fire? Will he be?
Here's the thing with Mick Cronin. Even though he's having a horrendous season, his buyout is massive. There is no way that he will even sniff being fired.
Well,
there's talks that Louisville may try to take him away from UCLA. I don't know how interested they are in that now, considering how things are going. But if that's, I mean, I don't see it happening, but there was chatter of that recently.
Well, he's very familiar with Louisville, and Louisville very familiar with him. He coached at Cincinnati, and I know that he knows people in Louisville. That would be some kind of a great landing spot for him, and I don't know that can actually happen. Like you said, from a financial standpoint, Louisville is obviously going to do something at the end of the season, without question. And you're closer to that than I am, but it would be curious to see what are the names that are floating around for that job.
We can
because
get
that's
into
a
more of
good
that
job.
later. There's a lot of every day it seems like the names that could take that job change at least a little bit. But yeah, once they finally make that move, whenever it is, it'll be interesting to see who that next coach is for the Cardinals.
Well, that'll be a great conversation for sometime in the rest of the week. But coming up in the second hour on Indiana Sports Beat Radio today, Pat Graham and Sharon Wilkerson. Man, what a fun conversation. You will enjoy that. Shannon Griffith is going to join us, talk some IU football, and Travis Miller on his perspectives on Mike Woodson. And I think that they're kind of right on in most ways. So you'll enjoy that as well. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.